Hey, good morning, everybody. My name's Mike. Gonna do one of these things that I haven't done in like 5 years, so bear with me on it. I am an unabashed short shooting head, primarily sustained anchor casting, formerly known as Skagit casting, I guess. Hey, while I'm doing this here, for those of you that are aficionados or utilize monofilm and shooting line, I hear all the time about different ways to take the memory out of it. If I just pull it off the reel, monofilament tends to have memory, which can lead to some complications that maybe can be frustrating. So I'm pretty diligent about every time I pull a length of line off the reel, just clamp down on it and give it a little bit of a stress. I do that every time I put the line back on the reel, whether I get in the boat and move off somewhere or get my vehicle and go to a different location. It's really easy. Gets the coil out and away we go. So my first lines when I started casting a two-handed rod many years ago was a double taper. Great line to learn with, but in terms of practical fishing applications, it wasn't exactly what I wanted. And over the years, lines have developed. We've got all kinds of choices now. I've started about 15 years ago. I started just out of curiosity to see just how short I could go with a shooting head and still get the results in terms of, the fishing that I wanted. And they've steadily become shorter and shorter and shorter to the point that most of the heads that I'm personally fishing are 2.2 times the length of the rod, and in some cases a little less. I'll talk about the pros and cons of short shooting heads as we go along here. One of the things that I heard asked as a question during Lee's demonstration was, wind certainly can be a factor. Wind is something we need to pay attention to. And again, my apologies, I don't have any kind of a set program here. I'm just going to kind of ramble on in my usual fashion. I'll probably jump around and confuse everybody, including myself. So, wind. Wind, I don't really consider it to be a distraction. I do the majority of my guiding and a lot of my fishing on the Missouri River, and we have a lot of wind over there. And if you only fished on the days where wind wasn't an issue, you'd probably limit your possibilities. So, general rule of thumb, downstream wind, cast off your downstream shoulder. Upstream wind, cast off your upstream shoulder. I mean, there's certainly the safety factor. If you've got a 15, 20 mile an hour gust, and you cast off the wrong side, it's probably going to blow the line into you. And, then we run the potential of the human fly collision, which can be painful. It's not fun. I've done it. So it's just a general rule of thumb. The cast that you choose, it's up to you. And, fishing's not a team sport. It's an individual recreational activity, and there's lots of ways to go about this. The casting, how you fish. It's up to you. Whatever you get the enjoyment from. That's what I'm all about, and that's what I recommend. The other advantage of casting on the downwind side is that, particularly with a sustained anchor cast, and certainly also with a touch and go style cast. That little bit of wind that's pushing against the line helps put more energy in the rod. So take advantage of the wind. Wind is your friend. It's not something to be fought. It's something to be used, in a positive fashion. So I like casting off my downstream or off my downstream shoulder. And the reason for that is I see everything much better. I cast most of the time, if I'm casting off my downstream side, facing straight downstream. That's the direction I'm going, so what the heck, I might as well. I'm going to be moving down through a run like this, and if I don't have to turn my body, particularly stumbling around in big rocks, which becomes more interesting the older I get, I just like to try to minimize everything as much as possible. So, cast that I probably use more than any other is a downstream shoulder poke. One of the reasons I really like sustained anchor casting is it's very methodical. It's a real, almost a lazy process. I don't have to do anything fast, and I like that. I'm by nature a pretty lazy caster. One of the things that certainly Bruce touched on, and others will as well, is when setting the anchor, it's all about lifting the rod. All too often I see people just kind of tip the rod over instead of actually physically lifting it. So lifting, it gives you much more precise anchor location. And everything is just super nice and easy. I don't go hard. I don't go fast. Lazy, right? So let's imagine in the process of a sustained anchor cast. And what is a sustained anchor cast? It's any of the family of casts where I'm going to utilize tension against the fly line to help energize the rod. Double spey, the poke cast, a circle, or even this one. All sustained anchor casts. So essentially there's three components. There's the anchor stroke, there's the D-loop stroke, and then instantaneously with a short shooting head, without any hesitation or pause, at the end or the completion of the D-loop stroke, we're going to go directly into the forward stroke. So if you mess around with a short shooting head, any pause between the end of the D-loop stroke and the forward stroke causes two things to happen, and they happen almost instantaneous. One is the bottom end of the D-loop is going to collapse towards the surface of the water, and all of the energy that you have put into the rod is going to go out into the atmosphere, never to be used again. It's gone, irretrievable. So I always think in terms of continuous motion. Whether I am successful at continuous motion every single cast, I'm here to tell you, probably not. But I don't know that the rod stopped anywhere there once I started the sweep of the D-loop stroke. Maybe it did. Maybe if you have one of Steven Spielberg's cameras, you could stop it. But I think in terms of continuous motion. Pretty easy to do. But there's a couple of things that I need to address relative to this short head casting. And if I was to take the three components of the cast, the anchor, sweep of the D-loop, and the forward stroke, and put them in their order of importance, the D-loop stroke is absolutely the most critical. That's the mechanism by which we energize or load the rod, whatever the case may be. Second is, in terms of importance, it's the anchor stroke. You know, in order to get a good D-loop, you have to have a pretty good anchor stroke. With a short head, is it absolutely critical that it be precisely located? No. But it should be in a good place. And last but not least, and it's counterintuitive, to me the forward stroke is the least important aspect of it. I think all too often we're inclined to think that we, have to take this thing and jack the heck out of it, to make it go forward. But the opposite is quite frankly the truth. All we have to do is take that stored energy and just direct it in a direction that we want to go. Just going to go around, change direction, and just come to an abrupt stop. An abrupt stop is helpful for a couple of reasons. One, by stopping the rod higher, if you will, we get a tighter, tauter loop. Transfers energy much better than a big open loop. And also, if I drive my rod tip down to the surface of the water, I want you to just watch my bottom hand. What does my bottom hand here do? Not really very much. It just kind of a fulcrum off of it more than anything else. But if I stop the rod abruptly, bottom hand automatically pulls in, which is very beneficial on the forward stroke. Brain tells the bottom hand, hey man, you gotta help along here because you've eliminated a lot of that forward motion with your dominant hand in this particular instance. So just something to think about. Come to an abrupt stop, positive stop, hard stop, high stop, whatever you want to use. So I'm going to go back to my premise or my theory that the D-loop stroke is the most important component. I still do 30, 35 days of guiding a year, all on the Missouri River, all for trout, all with little 2-hand rods, tight line swing, get out of the boat and wade. I don't do any of the traditional trout type of fishing, nymph fishing, dry fly fishing out of the boat, streamer fishing out of the boat. Don't do any of that. And the one thing that I see, even with some individuals that I've been lucky enough to fish with for many years, is the notion of elevating the rod too steep in the sweep of the D-loop stroke. Now, with a short shooting head, it's really in our best interests is to really keep everything low. That's going to create more contact or friction with the water as we're pulling the line or peeling the line off of the water. And it's also going to help prevent the pulling of the anchor, which is probably the single biggest complaint I hear about short shooting heads. Which brings me to the importance of watching. There's some obvious differences between single-hand casting and two-hand casting. And obviously we're using 2 hands, and in a lot of cases it's a much longer rod. But with single-hand casting, I think almost everyone will agree with me on this. When we're single-hand casting, we have a specific location that we would like the fly to go to. We have a target. Let's say the camera there is a feeding fish. Well, what do we want to do? We want to lead it by a couple of feet, right? So we're looking at a target. I think with two-handed casting, particularly with any of the disciplines, but certainly with this short shooting head casting, watching. And what am I watching? Well, the first thing I'm looking at is my anchor. And I think of the fly as the anchor. I want the fly to be about a rod length away, a little closer, a little further. That's fine, as long as I don't get it too close. Ooh, that might be a do-over. That could hurt. So, first thing I'm watching, you need to know where your fly is. You know, don't do this. You have no idea where your fly is. Well, you can do it if you want. These are just suggestions. I don't insist on anything, man. So lift, watching. Now, am I going to look out there? No, I'm not. I'm going to use, well, since it's getting towards playoff time in baseball, I'm going to use the baseball analogy. Played quite a bit of it at one point in time in my life, and I know one thing beyond a shadow of a doubt, and that is when I decided to make contact with the ball, swinging the bat, if I took my head and looked out to where I thought the ball should go before I made contact with the ball, it was strike three. So, watching. I'm going to watch my anchor, and now I'm going to watch everything as it develops here in the water, and that is the mechanism by which I have my timing when I know to go forward. Once I hit the ball, then I can look to see where the ball is going. I think watching is a very, very helpful to going to the next level of casting. Yeah, I can get away with that one. If I don't watch, I'm guessing, and I don't like to guess. Now, if, for instance, you use the same rod with the same line on it every single time you fish, you will, over time, develop that sense of timing, that feel. But if you go to a different length rod with a different length line relationship, where you're going to have to make adjustments. How do you know how to make the adjustments? By watching, not guessing. Watch. Been preaching this for years. So, pretty easy stuff. Pros and cons. If big distance is something that you think is necessary or something that you enjoy, short shooting head isn't the way to go about it. I fished a run this morning, and I just for grins put a blood knot in my running line, and I maxed at 100 feet to the end of the fly line, and I maxed out at that. So 10 feet of leaders, 110 feet. You know, if I want to go further than that, probably be in my best interest to go to a longer rod and a longer head length. But, you know, for myself, I still catch most of my fish this side of 80 feet. So it's personal choice. Another one of the cons involved with a short shooting head, running line management. You know, if you're casting for more significant distance, you know, you're going to have a lot more running line out. Well, how do we deal with all of that? Well, the first thing, by stressing it or stretching it, we remove the memory. That's very, very helpful. Let's say I was standing in more current with more velocity. I'd want to make sure that I took my first pull of line and throw it into the clean water that's outside of the hydraulics that is caused by the current, against my body here. If we just drop it right here, it's gonna get all coiled up and tangled and pull your hair out. See, I did. So first one goes out, and then I count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and maybe a little one there. As long as each successive loop is shorter than the one preceding it, it works. But that being said, I was asked some years ago by somebody that said, well, I keep getting these tangles in my running line. It's like, how do I prevent that? Well, it's the easiest thing in the world. Just don't shoot any line. Part of shooting head casting, I mean, you're going to deal with, with the problematic of tangles. It's unavoidable. But to me, it's part of it, and I don't mind it. I know a lot of, individuals may not like the notion of stripping in, a lot of line. To me, fishing is not a timed event. And, the time it takes to strip in all this line and in a proper fashion where it's, going to be resistant to tangling. The fact that a sustained anchor cast takes more time, certainly, than one of the touch and go family casts. None of that bothers me. Yes, it's true that you will get more casts during a day's fishing with, a snake roll than you will with a sustained anchor cast. That's not an issue with me. But again, it's up to you, man. Yes, sir.
What do you call that cast you keep doing where you're wrapping it around yourself?
This one I'm doing down here, downstream shoulder poke. I've got to give credit where credit is due on this. About 20 years ago, Scott O'Donnell and Eddie Ward and I were all guiding together over on the Grand Ronde. And Ed and I, whenever we had a day off, we'd run over and fish the Snake, big giant river, loved it. And he had been working on this cast, and he's like, I've got to show you this cast. And it is something that I had just kind of stumbled on prior to him talking about it, but I didn't see the advantages of it, so I just kind of eliminated it. And subsequently, it's been pretty much my go-to cast. If wind is not an issue or a factor, it's the cast you're going to see me doing most of the time. It's really enjoyable to do. It's just going to bring the anchor in towards me, and I'm just going to gravity drop the rod. And this here, I want this line, this stuck line, close to me, because a couple of things. One, as I come way around, whoops, disregard that one. I actually get the line to turn on itself. I'm not a physicist, so I don't know if there's any centrifugal force loading going on there. I don't even really think about all that stuff anymore. It works, and that's good enough. So the important thing with this particular cast is to make sure that the rod goes way out and around. That was better. Got all of that one. So fun cast. And it's one that I can do easily while facing straight downstream, which is, again, my preference. I don't use a double spey very much anymore. I rarely use a snake roll or a single spey. They're great casts. Everybody should have them in their arsenal. I just like the lazy progression of a sustained anchor cast. That's me. The other cast that I use, if wind is a factor, now I'm going to have to turn and face my target a little bit more, we could use the good old circle. You know, it's fine cast. And yes, I do cast with my dominant hand off of my non-dominant shoulder. I don't call it cack-handed casting because I am not a cack caster. Some of you will get that. The other one, and I don't have a name for it. Over 10 years ago, my wife and I were out fishing, and she was just messing around, and I was just watching her bring the line underneath the rod instead of over the top of it. And I'm like, wow, that looks cool. So I started doing this. It's a nice cast. It's kind of fun. Has a lot of energy. It's a powerful cast. So shallower angle of rise of the rod tip in the sweep of the D loop stroke, while being a watcher, out and around, abrupt stop. You're good to go.
Quick question, what are you watching on the forward stroke? What are you looking for in the line?
In this particular instance here, I am looking at the fly line leader junction. And as soon as I see that junction do its little pirouette and start to turn, I instantaneously go forward. That's my visual point of reference. I'm just staring at that. If it was wintertime and I was inclined to fish a sink tip, I would be watching for a portion of the sink tip to start coming out of the water or back into my D loop, and then I would instantaneously go forward. Shameless plug. That's why the 5x5 MOW tip is so easy to cast. You see the white portion come up, go forward, out it goes. It's mindless as long as you're watching. Any other questions?
And Mike, on this river, for example, what would you be fishing? What rod? And
So I fished a couple of rods. This is the new R8 7136. I fished the 7140X. I'm also a huge fan of the 6139X. I like fishing smaller rods. This one here you cannot buy. This is several lines glued together, and most of my lines I make myself. So, well, it's based on a Scandi type of taper. So one of the things that I kind of got sidetracked from that. What are the advantages of a short head? Well, I can fish just about anywhere. You know, if I have a big rock wall directly behind me or vegetation, hey man, I can get it done. And wind, little short, heavier heads. I mean, they eat right through it. You know, what are the components that I think of what dictate a good fishing cast? Well, for myself, one is that it should go a distance of my desire, what I think is necessary to fish the water effectively. Second, and even more importantly to me, is the angle that I cast for the technique that I'm utilizing. Whether I'm skating a fly or I want the fly to maybe present broadside to the fish, a la the grease line approach as set down by, A.H.E. Woods. Lots of variables there, but there's a certain angle of cast that I'm looking for, and a lot of times I'll pull a cast back if I'm off by 5, 7, 10 degrees, certainly. because I just felt that that was kind of a wasted cast. You know, the other one is it should go out straight and turn over. It should be reasonably effortless power rather than the oft-used principles of powerless effort. And it should be kind of pretty. And that's my criteria. So, you know, look, it's all about having fun. It is a recreational activity. The fate of Western civilization doesn't hinge on anything we're doing out here, man. It's just supposed to be fun. And so have fun with it. And that's, you know, that's what I think is important. So, any other questions? Come on, really? I don't.
What is that cast called, the one you were doing?
This one, off my downstream shoulder. It's just I just call it downstream shoulder poke. But you know, I'm not poking the line out, not with a short head. I'm just simple gravity drop. Okie doke. Big hitter Simon Gosworth's coming up next. Hey, thanks.